Chapter 6. Another bad meeting. The next morning, Eddie woke early and his mind was racing. The house was quiet and there was little traffic outside. He felt like he hadn't been to sleep at all, and he was still angry. Lynn was still asleep. It was 5:50 a.m. He listened to the radio for a while until he heard the news, and then he got up, had a shower and got dressed. By 6:45 a.m., he was ready for work and quickly said goodbye to Lynn before walking to the station to get the train into central London. The train was full, but Eddie managed to get a seat by the window. It was a fast train with only a couple of stops before Paddington. As the train picked up speed and aimed for the city, Eddie looked out at the fields and industrial estates passing by. He took deep breaths and tried to calm himself before the day started. He thought about his conference call with Moscow at 9:30 a.m., his scheduled sales meeting at 12 noon, and a lunch appointment at 1:30 p.m. with Neil Skinner in production. Then he was hoping to block off a couple of hours in the afternoon to catch up on emails and paperwork. He got to the office at 8:15 a.m. and sat at his desk with a double espresso and a bagel. As his PC started up, Eddie sorted through some of his papers and wrote a quick to-do list for the day ahead. He logged onto his email and took care of a few basic queries before noticing that Dominic had sent a meeting schedule for 10 a.m. There was no subject heading. Eddie saw that it clashed with his Moscow call, so he rejected it and suggested rescheduling for 11 a.m. and wrote a line to ask what the meeting was about. To support his message, he mentioned that he had an important call at 9:30 a.m. and asked Dominic for his patience in the matter. It annoyed him to think that his day with Dominic was already starting on a negative note, but he tried to put it to the back of his mind. By 9 a.m., the open plan office was filling up, and Maxine, Paula and Gavin arrived, who all worked in Eddie's department and sat near him in the office. "Hi Ed, how's it going?" asked Paula. "Fine, thanks," replied Eddie. "How was the meeting with Dominic yesterday?" asked Gavin. "Oh, well, a challenge, shall we say," said Eddie, trying to smile and not give too much away. "I bet it was. Rather you than me, mate," said Gavin. Eddie knew that Gavin and the team were on his side, but what could they do? Eddie went back to dealing with his emails and preparing for the call to Moscow at 9:30 a.m. At 9:20 a.m., his phone rang. It was Dominic. "Did you get the meeting schedule I sent? 10 a.m. this morning?" "Yes," I replied. "I can't do that time. I've got a call at 9:30 with Dima and his team in Moscow. I'm dialing in Adam in IT, who needs an update on the platform they're using for the new software." "It's too early for IT. Why are you bothering them with this?" "Because we need their input on—" "Look, Eddie, forget IT and forget your call. Do it tomorrow." "I can't. It's taken ages to find a time when we can all—" "You and I have a meeting at 10. "What about?" "Let's discuss that then. Okay?" Dominic hung up. Eddie glanced around and noticed Maxine looking at him. "You okay?" she asked. "Not really. Max, can you get hold of Dima for me and ask if he can reschedule the call for any time this afternoon?" "He won't like it," she said. "I know. Tell him I'm really sorry, and tell him Dominic has to see me at 10 a.m. Tell him I didn't have any warning. He'll understand." Eddie tried to smile again. This smile was more fake than the last, and Maxine could see it. "Okay," she said. Eddie calmly got up out of his seat and walked across to the far side of the office floor, took the lift upstairs and went into the gents' toilet. It was empty. He went to the sink, turned on the cold tap, collected water in his cupped hands and splashed it on his face to freshen up. The situation was impossible, he thought. Eddie felt he could no longer do his job. For a moment or two, he stayed where he was, leaning over the sink, staring at the pouring water and watching it go down the plug hole. Then he looked up, reached for some towels and dried his face. At that moment, the phone in his pocket announced the arrival of a text with the sound of a mystical harp. It was from Lynn. "Sorry about last night. Hope you are okay. Stay strong. D is a useless robot and he knows it. Love you, L. Kiss. Eddie smiled and punched back a quick reply. Thanks. Love you too. Kiss. The text and cold water seemed to give Eddie enough strength to go back and face another meeting with Dominic. It was almost 10 o'clock. He had enough time to grab a coffee before going to Dominic's office. Eddie knocked on the door, walked in and sat down. Dominic was engrossed in something on his PC. Without looking up, he muttered, "I'll be with you in a moment," and spent the next 5 minutes doing more work and ignoring Eddie. He even made a phone call to someone Eddie had never heard of. Eventually, Dominic turned his attention away from his computer and onto Eddie. "Right. What's the latest from Moscow?" "I haven't called them yet." "Why not?" Dominic's tone was sharp. Eddie was always amazed at how unpleasant and cold this man was. Was he like this at home? What kind of friends did he have? Did he have any friends? "I had a call planned for this morning at 9:30, but you asked me to change it so that we could have this meeting." "So when are you talking to them?" "I don't know yet," said Eddie. "You need to get a call sorted as soon as possible. Well, Maxine's doing that now." "Maxine shouldn't be doing that sort of thing. She's only a temp." "Well, she sometimes takes phone calls for us in the office and sets up meetings." "She's not a secretary, Eddie. She's a student. She types in data. You can't ask her to phone our biggest customers." Eddie's face was red. He could feel it. Already things were out of control. "She's only setting up a conference call," he said. "Do it yourself," said Dominic impatiently. "Fine," said Eddie. It wasn't fine at all. "And copy me in on the schedule. I want to join the call." "Why?" "I want to find out when Dima's going to order the rest of the software for all the offices in the region." "Dominic, please leave that to me. This call is more for product training and looking at any specific problems so far. I don't want to distract him with pressure for more orders. We have time for that." "We don't have time, Eddie." "Yes, we do. At least until my next visit to Moscow. That's when we will be looking at the next orders. As a matter of fact, I've got a meeting with Neil in production today to look at costs." There was a knock on the door and Neil Skinner, head of production, walked into the office. "Well, well, here he is," said Dominic. "Come in, Neil. We were just talking about you." "Nothing bad, I hope," said Neil. His smile was insincere. He was a very tall, thin man who always looked pale and wore dull suits. The grey man, they called him in the office. Neil was Eddie's main contact in production for all things related to the Moscow project. He was a cold character who took himself very seriously and had little sense of humour. Like Dominic, he had a superior manner and was stubborn. When engaged in conversation, he looked at the other person critically, judging them negatively. Neil always tried to give the impression that he knew everyone and that he was in charge, but it was clear he was not really comfortable in his role and didn't really know what he was doing. He hid behind business jargon, name-dropping, and things he'd learned from going on too many training courses. But bosses liked him. Employees and customers did not. They thought he was a waste of time. Eddie knew he was a waste of time. "Neil, thanks for joining us." "No problem," Neil replied. So agreeable, so good with a boss around. Neil crossed his long legs and folded his arms. Eddie now had a feeling that this meeting had been arranged and that Neil was part of it. It was no coincidence that he had turned up at that point. "Did you see the match last night?" Neil asked Dominic. Still no smile. "No, I missed it. I heard that new defender Slater scored an own goal and saved us. That was very kind, thank you. We're still 5 points ahead of you, though. But not for long. You've got Chelsea on Saturday, and then you're away to Liverpool the following week." "Gentlemen," interrupted Eddie, "if it's okay with you, could we get back to business?" "The thing is, Eddie," said Dominic, "we need more people on the Moscow account." Eddie wasn't sure where this was going, but he was slightly encouraged by the possibility of getting more assistance. "Right, that's good," he said, trying to be positive. "We're short-staffed, as you know, and we could use more help." But he still wasn't sure why Neil was there. He remained still and quiet, looking first at Dominic and then at Eddie.
So Neil has agreed to take charge and give you guys a hand.
Dominic looked back at his computer screen, then tapped something on his keyboard. Eddie looked at Neil. Take charge of what, exactly? He asked, looking back at Dominic.
Take charge of the account. In Moscow.
Dominic gave a little laugh. Eddie went cold. He could feel the sharp blade of realization enter his back. Are you moving to Moscow, Neil? He asked, confused but hopeful.
No, mate. I'm staying in London.
Neil smiled his superior smile. Eddie did not like the sound of this. He didn't like being laughed at either. Eddie turned his attention to Dominic. Dominic, I don't quite follow. What's going on?
I've decided to make some changes in the team. Neil has a lot of experience in this field, so you will report to him. He is now head of product and business development. It's a new position.
Neil kept his eyes on Dominic the whole time. He looked very pleased with himself, as if he was waiting to be given a trophy of some sort.
It makes sense, Eddie, really, said Neil.
I'm not interested in your opinion, snapped Eddie. He was trying to stay calm, but inside he was ready to explode. He tried to keep his voice steady. He leaned forward on Dominic's desk and looked him in the eye. So what's my position?